It is an honor to open the inaugural Modern Data Quality Summit with a conversation on the evolving role of data quality in the modern data infrastructure. A lot of that infrastructure is moving into the decentralized world of things like data mesh. Who better to have this conversation with but none other than Zhamak Degani, the creator of the concept of data mesh. Zhamak, welcome to the Modern Data Quality Summit.
Sanjeev, thank you for having me. Delighted to be here.
Thank you so much. So, Zhamak, if I were to say that you've been busy this year, that would be an understatement of the year.
Yes.
Tell us, what have you been up to? I see there's a Nextdata logo behind you. What's new in your world?
Thank you for asking. I have been super busy. Starting a company definitely takes all the living, waking hours of your life.
Yes.
So we've been busy putting a product together, creating a company that codifies data mesh, which was introduced really as a concept, but codify some of the fundamental elements of it, such as the data product, and provide a developer experience that allows many technologies to simply be able to create, share, connect data products across platforms, across technology stacks.
That is great. And so, Zhamak, you've been a consultant for many years when you were at ThoughtWorks, and you've been talking to clients for a long time. So one of the most pressing questions I have is that I'm sure throughout your career and my career, we've been dealing with data quality for the longest time. Why is it so hard to fix it? So I want to take a peek into your mind as to the past, the present, and the future of data quality. So let's start with the past. So what has been your experience with trying to help your customers with their data quality journey?
Sure. Yeah, as you said, data quality has been this, high data quality has been this holy grail that everyone has been looking for. By definition, the state of qualitative and quantitative pieces of information that describes attributes and information about the data is something that we always wanted to build into the data or into the communication about the data, so that we can, as a user of the data, we can make an informed decision whether this piece of data is fit for purpose or not. I don't think that has changed. I think there is an evolving movement across multiple axes that directly impacts how we define, how we assure, how we evaluate data quality. I think it is a rapid evolution that's happening. But Sanjeev, I guess you know that the perspective that I bring is a perspective of, again, data mesh, data as a product. So I have to just preface that whatever I say is coming from that vantage point and that, I guess, biased view around data quality. So back to your question, I think in the past, data quality was defined, evaluated, and shared a little bit too late in the life cycle of data to consumption or data to value. Data was always a byproduct of some computation upstream, users interacting with applications and systems, the data being generated, and then after the fact, try to figure out by the user. Of course, the quality is the eye of the user. The user tried to, or the governance team tried to define whether this data is fit for purpose or not. It has the quality that they expected for that particular use. So I think one of these dimensions that data quality in future is changing is when in that life cycle, in that value stream, data quality is being assessed, defined, and evaluated. The other axis around which I think from past to present, and we can talk about how in present or future is changing. In the past, data quality really was a responsibility. Whose responsibility was it? It was usually the responsibility of a third party, not the provider, not the consumer, the governance team, right? A third party is now coming from outside, and at some point in that data from production to consumption, try to inject some sort of a control, some form of a certification that says this data has a certain level of guarantees. But again, those folks, the governance team, while they might have the knowledge or capability to articulate the quality, they're not in a position to assure it because they're not the generators of the data. They come in to play a little bit late. And I think the third dimension across which, so it was the dimension of when in the process and who in the process. And I think the third dimension that is evolving rapidly is the impact of data quality and the scale of that impact in what we do. In the past, I mean, the worst case could have happened that maybe we had some business reports that were wrong, some, prediction of sales or marketing. But today, data quality is impacting what's ChatGPT spewing out from the other end, which now being deployed in all sorts of the decision making. I mean, every week we have a new application of it, but really application of AI and ML, which is basically finding patterns in the existing data to make predictions, and automatically people automatically, or systems or companies automatically acting upon that prediction, has a much more can have a much more direct, I think, impact that we can think. So I think along those three axes, maybe we can look at the past, present, and future.
Yeah. I really like the way you put it, because as I was listening to you, I've also been a consultant in the past, and this whole people process technology became such a common thing that we didn't even want to talk about, but that's what it boils down to. Because what you just said, if I were to paraphrase, is that data quality is a business problem, and that has not changed. But if we look at it from people's point of view, it was neither the data producer nor the data consumer who was participating in data quality, but there was like a third person in this triangle, which was the steward or the data governance group, and that sort of caused probably a level of friction.
Yeah, and ineffectiveness, right?
Effectiveness,
despite all intentions, that's already too late and already done by people that are not in a position to create really change. So the best they can do is to create, as you mentioned, create control processes like, we have certificate gold and silver and platinum, and that just creates friction. And in a system that, tries to move as fast as possible to innovate data, that's just a bottleneck, right? So
So the people bottleneck, and then the process was this, what you just described, such a long process, and that too convoluted in the sense that it just took forever, and we kind of pushed the data quality problem to the right-hand side. In fact, I think sometimes the consumer would detect there was a problem. And then the third piece that you talked about was technology, and how, first of all, I think you mentioned the stakes are too high now. That we cannot just fix it in an Excel spreadsheet. So technology is also coming to help now with this, using machine learning models to inference and find anomalies. So that is a great way to actually, I'm going to stick to that as we move in this conversation today. By the way, it's so great to hear your thoughts, because this is all we're doing this in a fireside chat. This is something that is born out of your experience and not scripted. So yes, so that's great. Okay, so let's move to present. So how are we fixing the people, the process, and the technology aspects of data quality as we get into the world of data products, let's say?
Exactly. So again, I bring the perspective of kind of data mesh oriented thinking and data product naturally oriented thinking. So I think from the people perspective, what companies are trying to do now and what data mesh kind of try to put in place is that let's give the responsibility of data quality to the people that are best positioned to actually implement it, who are as close to the point of origin of the data as possible within the boundaries of that organization, right? So it becomes really these data product teams or data product developers, data product owners, who are very close to the data. So if you're, as an example, if you're in an e-commerce team, these are domain-oriented ownership, right? Aspect of the data mesh comes to play here is that if you're an e-commerce team and you're generating data that represents the interactions of the user with the websites, the purchases that is happening digitally on the website, and that historical view that allows now, people in the future come and look in the past and see the patterns and make decisions, you are responsible as a long standing owner of that piece of data. You're responsible for the quality of it. So it's the role and responsibility is shifting left, and the process-wise, we're shifting left to really stop the flaws or the errors propagate through the system. And secondly, I think from the process perspective, try to build quality in, as opposed to add quality on top of the data later, right? So an aspect of a data product is that we're not just talking about purely the data itself, we're talking about all of the other parameters that go around the data to at least convey what are those qualitative or quantitative information about this data that expresses its quality, right? Quality is very, I guess, subjective because it's based on the user. Right. So I think that's one change. So which is who is responsible for it, which is data product developers and data product owners. And when is it happening? When the quality is being built in, and it is as close to the source as possible in the data product itself. And I think if you follow then that thread of thought, then we arrive at a whole lot of, I guess, ancillary from the technology perspective that needs to evolve to make sure this model works.
So I am one. So we have all these new terms that we keep hearing about, like data contracts is one of them. And we have a talk coming up with Chad Sanderson later on, who's been talking quite a bit. So you said data quality is very expressive in nature, and the responsibility, accountability needs to shift to the data product owner or that team. So how do these two things come together? The expressiveness of data quality, is it a data contract, or how is it defined?
I think there are two separate concerns, but related here when we talk about expression of data quality. One is, how do we decide what constitutes data quality? Right. What are the parameters by which we actually define data quality? And I think that's really it comes down to some form of a standardization, some form of an agreement of a definition of data quality. And in the world of data mesh, I suppose that falls under the federated governance responsibility. And hopefully it can actually go beyond that, and we can have some sort of a formal agreement around it as an industry. In fact, when I was writing the data mesh book, I did a little bit of a research, and there is already a very rich vocabulary around data quality as part of the older work that was done with semantic web and best practices of sharing data over web, where people try to define some sort of a standards for expression of quality. For example, the vocabulary we use to say, is this data accurate? What are the temporal metrics of the data? There is a whole set of attributes that we use to just define completeness or timeliness, right? So one is we've got to agree upon what constitutes quality, and we'll convey that. And then the other is, how does every piece of data or data product, in case of data mesh, encodes those parameters and then provides them as part of their agreement or contract or API with the rest of the world. And I absolutely think that expression of data quality metrics, so those constituents of data quality, has to be part of the data products APIs. Contract is a very strong word, because your contract means what the consumer and provider agree upon And in fact, in case of data quality, it's not what it is more of the provider articulating the different parameters based on the processing that they've done, like how often the data gets updated or what's the level of completeness. But it's a guarantee that they're giving to a very diverse set of consumers. And then it's really each consumer might have a very different evaluation of assessment of whether that level of quality is fit for them or not. Whether this expression is acceptable by them or not. So even though that the provider might guarantee a set of parameters, some consumers may agree with that, it might be fit for them, and some are not. Like, for example, we might have a data quality parameter of timeliness near real-time data, right? We're providing near real-time about some form of events that are happening, let's say sales transactions or interactions with the website. And that, and in addition to that, maybe there's a parameter that says the level of consistency or integrity of that data. And for a particular consumer, low latency, low integrity might be completely acceptable because they're trying to find an anomaly in maybe the website interactions or the quality of the website itself. But for some other consumer, that is not acceptable. What they want actually is low cadence, maybe every day, higher, low timeliness. It's maybe at the end of the day, more of a batch representation of that data, but higher integrity, consolidation of all sales transactions, because they're trying to consolidate accounts. So that level of kind of contractual agreement, it's a little bit more fluid in terms of who agrees to that contract. Is provider providing it, and it's really a consumer. It's up to consumer to decide whether that's the right level of quality or not.
Is it true to say that the responsibility of data quality is in, like you said, beholder's eyes? So like you said, one department may say timeliness is extremely important. I need a completely up-to-date data now. That to me is data quality. But the finance team may say that for me, data quality is 100% accurate, consistent data, and it may not be timely. So you've got two different definitions of data quality from two different consumers. The data product owner, what is their role? Because they've got two different definitions of data quality for the sales transactions, like you said. So how is the mapping from one data product owner's data product to multiple different definitions of data quality?
Yeah, so that's actually becomes, you have two data products, because the job of, as you mentioned, that was a very clever observation there to say, first of all, it's a data product owner responsibility, because their job is to look at the consumers, a very diverse set of consumers in the organization, and say, okay, what data I need to provide to satisfy this diverse? Maybe they fall on the most common denominator, providing the real time. You do the downstream. You're responsible for consolidating and removing maybe inconsistencies and creating more of a batch-oriented view of the data. Or they might say, actually, I have two very separate consumers. My team is best positioned to provide that consolidation. So I actually provide, that's why data quality, those SLO metrics or those guarantee metrics, quality metrics, is part of a definition of the data product. So you will have a data product that's providing near real time, maybe lower degree of consistency and integrity, and perhaps conversely, another data product that has longer delay, but a higher degree of integrity and consistency. And they're both valid, high quality data products, completely fit for different purposes.
Right. So that, sorry, I'm pushing deep into the data product space. I hope that's okay.
Of course.
Your Nextdata. So hopefully you're going to help address some of these things. So my next question that comes up is, if I'm a data product owner and I'm producing my data product, I may not know who my consumers are. So in other words, I may not know what their quality requirements are. For example, I'm an oil and gas company. I produce oil and refine it, but then I guarantee the product, but then somebody's going to take that oil, petroleum, and create plastics. I have no idea about who the downstream users are who will take my data product, connect it to another data product, and do something with it.
Yes.
In such a scenario, what is the responsibility of the data product owner to communicate the quality of their data product?
Exactly. I think that's a brilliant question. And in fact, I would take it a bit further and I say that's a dimension across which I think the data product management is so different from any other product management is the unknown unknowns. For any other product, you're generating that product at a point in time for that point in time usage. And for that point in time, you have pretty good understanding of who the users are. So how the product should fit those users, use cases, right? But for data, in fact, your users are people in the future that come back and that look at that data in the past to find insights and correlations and patterns to then make predictions. So you don't even if you were, you had a great network or ways of understanding who your users are in today, you don't, that dimension of time is so important that you just can't predict who the future users would be. So I think in that case, the best we can do is that the quality is fairly, the articulation of the quality is fairly driven by the provider, because you just simply don't know what these consumers are in future. And I think if the best we can do is optimize quality of data products based on one axis, and that axis for me is truthfulness, business truthfulness, as in, as a provider, what is the most truthful articulation of that data that I can possibly provide? And often when we look at that truthfulness, oftenly, low, kind of high resolution, high frequency events are the most truthful articulation of data, because they're basically describing what is happening in the universe, and in the universe of that data product as as the events and business interactions happen. However, the most truthful articulation of the data perhaps is the least useful quality of data product, because it's very hard for analytical use cases to actually digest a lot of events and be able to make decisions, because it's very high resolution, right? We talk about high resolution, high volume of data. So I think the best providers can do, despite this, facing this dilemma of truthfulness versus usability for future versus usability for present, is to having kind of multiple sets of data products. So there's a concept in data mesh called source aligned data products, as in data products that are getting created right at the point of generation of that data, right as close to the source as possible. And I think those are those truthful data products that will ever be present. And if you wanted to wind back time from future and come back and see what happened in the past, those are the type of data products we would look at. When it comes to usability perspective, then we look at the present usage and try to create derived or aggregate data products. It's another class of data products data mesh introduces, which is more fit for purpose for today. So let me aggregate these events across, I don't know, a dimension of user, across a dimension of a particular product, so that consumption of that could be it could be a more useful data product for present. So and beauty of data mesh is that you don't have to choose between one or the other. One fits the other, and you can kind of connect these things together to create more derived, presently useful data products, and while keep those more business truthful source aligned data products to recreate derived data products in future.
Right. This is fascinating discussion. By the way, it's some of what we are discussing, is that part of Nextdata's mission somewhere, or
Yeah, I mean, we try to of course we want to, you know, create a system that is useful for people, not mathematically correct necessarily, right? We have this dilemma as well as how should we, what are the first, we're trying to create a product, right, that is useful. So codification of data products and the set of tooling around it that people can easily create, build, connect, discover data products is the mission. But that and you know, we articulate it as the container, a container that brings all of these facets like the quality, the APIs, the code, the storage together as one unit, as one coherent unit, is something that we try to codify and create tooling around it. But we also have this desire to be as open as possible so that other folks can bring in, you know, their own components. So we try to create a framework, let's say data quality, what we discussed, a framework, a set of APIs for data quality that can be extended, you know, and as we evolve the vocabulary of data quality, others being introduced without us and our product roadmap being a bottleneck. But this is absolutely what we're discussing is part of that codification.
Oh, wow, very nice. So, and if we move to the last sector, because we've talked a lot about people and process and what needs to happen organizationally and process-wise, but then there's technology, and the technology thing, we say that we've been too technology-centric, let's not worry about technology, let's fix people and process. That's the socio-technical aspect. But from a technology point of view, you announced Nextdata about 3 months ago. And in those 3 months, ChatGPT is all over us. AI is going to take over. So have you been looking at what is the role of AI in modern data quality?
Absolutely. I think it actually made it more evident and urgent for us to think about data management and quality as an axis of that more seriously, because the impact of, again, bad data, garbage in, garbage out, is much higher now than people try to use data and generate reports and insights. It's now a very effective machine. It's confidently generating answers that are completely wrong because the data is incorrect. So, and I think we started this conversation before recording with you giving some examples, you know, entertaining.
By the way, to the viewers, what Zhamak and I were talking about was, I asked ChatGPT, tell me where does Zhamak Dehghani works, and ChatGPT very confidently tells me she was at ThoughtWorks because it was trained up to September 2021, so it's correct, but it's that information is outdated.
Yes, exactly. So the timeliness of like how updated that data is and when that answer is being generated. If the answer was questioned in 2021, maybe okay, but now we're at a different point of time. So I think one thing is that using data beyond analytics and using data for now ML and AI as the most important ingredient of that system. I know that a lot of people focus on, okay, what algorithm or what model we're using, but data is, those algorithms and models stabilize, and there will be very few of them will be using. It's the data features and the parameters to those algorithms that's going to be differentiating between those models. So I think that the quality around the data is now becoming even more urgent issue to deal with.
Right.
There is a, I suppose, some form of a hypothesis that might say, well, let's just generate data however we're doing. Let's throw AI at it to actually discover maybe the problems of the data in itself. And I don't know if I completely buy that. I think, of course, the AI and ML as a tool to discover anomalies or things that we can't quite explain, or discrepancy between the data, is a very powerful tool. But I think right from the point of generation of that data, we are still, as humans, are in the loop because we are building those systems. So I think we are still, as programmers, as developers, as data product developers, are responsible. We're not going to be, off the hook because maybe some AI in future can solve it. We have to build quality in. We have to test for quality, and we have to articulate quality. And I think, moving forward, I have personally a bit of a discomfort with this, separation of data and metadata. Is data and then metadata quality. I think we need to converge those. No data shall exist without, metadata that describes its quality. So I think that data and metadata should blur together, and it's just data, and without it, there is nothing, right? And that would then allow quality to be built in and be evaluated at every point of the usage, I think.
I think it's still a bit early days. We talked about training being behind, but those things can be fixed. But I really think, I love what you just said. Data and metadata should come together. There should be no difference. I think AI can be a huge tool in an arsenal, in the sense that AI relies on vector search. So you turn the data into vectors, and you can finally find context, which a keyword search misses out. So I think these are going to be exciting times ahead on the impact of AI on data quality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. I want to thank you so much for coming to and helping with the keynote for the Modern Data Quality Summit. It's such a pleasure. Cannot wait to see how you take your Nextdata to the next level. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your invitation, Sanjay.
You're welcome.